Yeah, I want to give you a brief discourse of the last 10 years, how we got to a point that we made a space game with 20 million euro budget without investors, without publishers. And to give you some context, this is our dev team. So the development team is about 20 people. We are located in Hamburg, Germany. We do have some contractors that are internationally. Then we have a marketing and communications team that's also quite internationally. So we do all the publishing in-house. The veterans have been with us for over 20 years, so that really helped us to build a strong team. And we've been known for making fast-paced, arcadey space combat games for about 15 years. I started on mobile gaming. Now ROCKFISH Games is on PC and console. And we're currently working on a massive paid expansion for EVERSPACE 2. Yeah, so what do you get for 20 million euros? What's the game that we built? So it's EVERSPACE 2 is a narrative-driven single-player space combat game, and it's for PC and console only. As I said, it's only the 9th gen console, so only PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S and X. It's semi-open world. It has RPG elements. It has mining and trading. If you have a space game, you have to tick a lot of boxes. Otherwise, people will be complaining. So this is a quite challenging genre. There's 6 star systems. We have over 100 handcrafted locations in there. There's a 30-hour campaign. It takes about 90 hours to really unlock all the secrets, the puzzles in the game. And 4 hours of dialogue. We have 20 voice actors. It's fully voiced in English and German. 2 hours of cinematic and in-game cutscenes. We worked with a lot of outsourcing studios for that. And there are 9 fully customizable ship classes, and there's an end game with like an endless loop, like this is this one more run experience. Okay, and then there's HOTAS, and HOTAS support is a special thing you need for space games. Otherwise, the space truckers coming from the Dangerous and Star Citizen, they're gonna yell at you, wow, I have this one piece of hardware, you have to support it or you get a negative review. It doesn't help you sell the game, but if you don't support them, you get hammered with negative reviews. So this is why we're doing that. And yeah, we just launched 1 free DLC. There's going to be another one in spring. And as I said, 1 major expansion, winter 2024 or early 2025. Okay, yeah. Really good response on the media. We don't have to go this in very much detail. We are sitting at 87 or 88% positive reviews on Steam, so really a great game for us. And yeah, where did this all come from? So basically, we took 7-digit profit from the predecessor. And before I dive into this, every talk starts with a nice story, so I have to tell you a story how we get to this point, or how we got to this point. So prior to ROCKFISH Games, I founded and ran Fish Labs Games, which was one of the leading mobile gaming studios for console experience on mobile phones. And we were best known for making the Galaxy and Fire series. And when the business model turned from premium to free-to-play, long story short, we couldn't make the transition. We had to file for bankruptcy in 2013. I got pushed out of my own studio in a hostile takeover. I had to start all over. But a AAA publisher was contacting us because we made Galaxy and Fire 2, and they wanted to have it for the back then new console generation. And my last call was like, hey, it's us. So us is now my partner and I. We don't have a team. We don't have any money. The title is gone. We don't have our engine anymore. And we don't even have computers. So we're dead. But if you still want to have a space combat game for the back-gen new console generation, we're the best team. We can do this. If I get this deal, I get my best people back. We had 85 people at peak in my previous studio. I go back, get the 8 dudes who made Galaxy and Fire, who started with us 20 years ago. Took me a few months to close that deal. I got the people back. We worked for 9 months on a new title. That publisher really loved it. I think they thought it's awesome, it's fine. We brought another team on who did the online multiplayer part because we don't have experience in that. And then after 9 months, end of pre-production, I got a counter signature at 5 p.m., 30 people, another 2 years, the biggest deal I've ever got. At 9 p.m., I got a phone call. Oh, we had a change of heart. We're pulling the plug. Last payment is tomorrow because we're still in pre-production and we don't want this anymore. And we're like, oh, that's bad. Then I tried to sell this half-finished or this game in development to somebody else, which never works if you have a situation where an existing party is at the table and you have a new one and you're in between, you try to broker a deal, is not working because the old company still wants to have as much money for the old code. The new one doesn't want to pay anything for it. You just hope to survive. It's not working, right? It didn't work. And what we ended up doing is like taking that project, started all over because we made a little bit profit from this very first deal. And this is where we started from this canned work for hire project. And we made, then with a little help from private investors, I think we got a loan of, what was it, 150 and then another 100. So 250,000 euros private loan to get this to a Kickstarter in 2015. And there was in August. In September, we would not have been able to pay the salaries. So if the Kickstarter would have failed, that would have been it. After 20 years of like doing everything, it's like we would be dead. I wouldn't be standing here, but it worked. And then we also had a limited run edition for retail. And until today, we sold 1 million copies of the base game of EVERSPACE 1 on PC. Out of that, 100,000 copies were during early access. And 7,000 DLC units on PC. That's the Encounters expansion, but that's also an art book, an OST. And on console, we sold 500,000 units. That's a mixture of pre-orders, base game, DLCs, bundles of the base game. And so it's not, you cannot compare it directly, but you get the idea. So for an indie title, decent success. And we made a lot of platform deals. So we had an Xbox exclusivity. So EVERSPACE 1, we brought it to Xbox first, then to PlayStation. We had a deal with GOG. Then we had a game, one of the first titles that went into Game Pass. We ported it over to Stadia. We were at the early day when Google still paid good money for titles being ported to Stadia. And and after that, Amazon contacted us and wanted to have to Luna, so we could just take the game, have a nice license fee. So all this combined enabled us to work on a vertical slice for EVERSPACE 2, also to prove ourselves that we can do the step from like a linear roguelike space shooter to an open, semi-open world space action RPG with a much bigger budget. Just to give you an idea, EVERSPACE 1 had a development budget of 5 million euro. When we planned EVERSPACE 2, we were thinking about 10, but we had to just around about 2 million or so to start with, right? And then we needed the early access. And again, the Kickstarter. So this is the first for EVERSPACE 2, taking the profits from EVERSPACE 1, then doing a Kickstarter. That was the next big beat in our journey to fund the game. And what I do now for the next few revenue sources, I put in what was good, what was bad, what was really ugly. And so to give you an idea what to look out for in these different revenue streams that you can have. So we did another Kickstarter in 2019. We announced the title at Opening Night Live. If you have a new title, you haven't talked about it, I highly recommend you put it out and try to get into either the Summer of Gaming or Opening Night Live, because then around about 20 million people will see your game, and this is your uplift. Then you be there, you demo at Gamescom, you have your prototype, show it there, and then you can do a Kickstarter, or maybe not, but this is really the first, you need to get out of this. You need to find this one beat to get off the ground. And so the good thing is, we had a fully playable prototype. It shows, we're talking about 2 hours playtime in that prototype. So we had like 4 locations that you can fly and then shoot stuff, and it was very pretty, looked really good. We charged 30 euro for a copy. And then there's something that's very unusual, or quite unusual. We sold the prototype at a higher tier. So you may have heard that some Kickstarters, they have a free prototype to get a lot of people in, they test the game, and then they support you in a Kickstarter. We, on the other hand, we said, well, you want to create your super fans at these trade shows. So they get a taste of the game, they love it, then they go to the Kickstarter, hopefully, and they support you. If you don't give away the prototype, it becomes a scarcity good. So you put a price tag to it, and then you can go to the media and say, hey, by the way, this is going to cost $10. It also has keys, and then you can give them Steam keys, and they do a raffle. You get extra visibility. If you would have given away the prototype for free, there's no reason for the media to cover you. So sometimes holding things back, put a price tag to it. A, you have more opportunities to use it as a marketing tool, and secondly, you get feedback only from people who pay for the product. It's not like the free users. They don't read, they don't. The lesser the price, the lower the entry barrier, the less qualified the feedback is in general you get from the audience. The higher the price, the more it goes to your biggest fans who don't care about the price, but they really want to make sure that the game is as good as it can be. So that's an important one here. We raised $500,000 from 8,000 backers. We had, again, right time, right place. One of the biggest streamers, Carnage, he's 1 million followers. He loved EVERSPACE 1, supported on Kickstarter. When it came out, he played it for a week and said, this is a sleeper hit, this is awesome, I love this. We were on the Twitch front page, I think for a week, without paying anybody, any streamers. If you have these kind of super fans, and they are a big streamer, obviously, that's super good. But what we did is, or actually what I did, everyone in the early days who streamed that game, I was in chat and was saying, hey, the devs are here, and I was replying to questions and provided them feedback. And that made their stream special. So, oh, the head of the studio is here, that's really cool, and I could explain more things. And we built a relationship, and in the end, we offered Carnage that he could be in the expansion with his own story beat or the coalition, and he liked that. And that ended in EVERSPACE 2. He paid 1,000 euros to have his own space station in EVERSPACE 2. And when it came out, he played it for around about 50 hours, a full week, which coincidentally fell together with his 10-year anniversary of Twitch. So his biggest day on Twitch, he said, yeah, and you know what? I play EVERSPACE 2 today. It's like, man, I couldn't have wished for more. So sometimes you're just lucky and it blew up. That was really fantastic. We also had a runaway Kickstarter hit. So if you deliver the first one, then there's a certain level of trust that people come back. Oh, I know these guys. They delivered on their first Kickstarter, because this is really, talk about it in a sec, the bad thing about Kickstarter, that some teams didn't deliver. And there was some fatigue or criticism about Kickstarter because of that. And finally, that whole streaming thing got us into stream the game ourselves. So through the first Kickstarter, one of our super backers became our community ambassador. He's an American dude, and he talks even more than I do. Hard to imagine, but he does. And he's very entertaining. He's also very good at playing the game at the same time. And we started, before we started with the Kickstarter, because we found, okay, trust is really important. There was one of the years where a lot of bad games launched. And we said, well, we have to make sure that people understand this is actually the game, right? So if you hadn't had the chance to play the game on the show floor, we wanted to make sure that people see, oh, this is the daily build. So every week we took it directly from the development team for 2 hours, we showed the game. And that helped really increase trust. The bad stuff, that is something, well, thanks to GDPR, everything has to be with double opt-in. Even on the Kickstarter platform, we couldn't reach out to our existing backers. So even Kickstarter had that issue, so this is why we lost a few. Then generally we had too many reward tiers. We can talk about Kickstarter in length, so I'm gonna go through this a bit quicker here. Generally, Kickstarter traffic is about 35%, so the rest of the traffic, you have to make sure it comes through media and paid campaigns. So it's not like, you put it on Kickstarter and that's it. Then again, I said there's some Kickstarter fatigue, so that the media was reluctant. Is this game really come out? Are we still writing about it? So that's the challenge. We spent 50K on social media just to get the visibility there. And there was some Kickstarter internet drama about the people of Kickstarter wanted to have a union. Then the Kickstarter manager said, no, we don't want to have that. And then people said, oh, I really love the game, but I'm not supporting Kickstarter because I hate their decision about refusing to run a union. We're like, oh, thanks for that, I guess. Yeah. And so actually, I think this is probably one of the more important things here. It's like, you have to go really consider twice if you want to have a console tier on a Kickstarter, because making a console port obviously depends on the game, can be a lot of work, but plus typically you go on a lower price on a Kickstarter than you sell the game later on. What happens, at least on PlayStation, you have to buy those keys. So you couldn't end up in a situation, let's say you make a game and sell it on Kickstarter for $20 and then it's on the store for 40, then you still have to buy the keys from Sony and you might end up losing money or like not making money at all. So that's one thing. In the end, we only sold 200 copies to console backers. That might be because we do a space combat game and it's a PC genre. So that might not apply to the game that you want to make, but keep that in mind. Yeah, and this time around, we didn't do a VR support optional. In 2015, there was all the rage, was a big thing. There's a long thread on the EVERSPACE 2 Steam forums where, yeah, enjoy, well, we're not doing VR anymore. Long story short, I think VR is an opportunity if you make a VR-only game. If it's optional VR, yeah, read through that Steam forum and then you make your decision if you still want to do this. Right, and the ugly part is like actually I said 3 months, it's probably more 6 months of, so in total preparation and doing the Kickstarter, you don't do anything else. So, and I was in charge of that. Forget about private life, going sport, to the movies, you just do Kickstarter and that's it. And it is really pays a toll. If you watch the videos, you can see me age in fast forward. So it's like, it's 5 weeks, but I look like 5 years. At the end, I was really burned out completely. I think it was like the day before the last day, we hit our funding goal. So it could easily gone the other way around, that we didn't get the funding and then you have the negative momentum. So there's always this threat. The early access was probably the biggest contributor to those 20 million. That I'm talking about here, and I can highly recommend Steam Early Access. I go so far, I would say I wouldn't make another game without doing Early Access. We did it for EVERSPACE 1, now with EVERSPACE 2, even stronger, and here's why. So we got 70,000 wish lists through these Steam festivals, Next Fest they're called right now. Back then we were lucky we could participate 2 times, and now it's just once. And we had, and the first one was like 40,000 wish lists, the next one was 30,000 wish lists. That's above baseline, so it's really, we can tell this is from that event. So this is how effective it is. And then we worked our way up to 280,000 wish lists the day before the early access launch. That prototype we did for the Kickstarter, we then spent even 2 more months to get it polished and have better performance and get it out onto the Steam to have a free demo. And the reason why we said, oh, we have to put even more time into, even though it only did its purpose for the Kickstarter, we wanted to make sure people try it out. It has better performance also on lower systems. So still it makes sense. You have your prototype out there for Kickstarter, for crowdfunding, getting super fans, still investing some time, have a really strong demo. And 70% activation is a very good attach rate for a demo. And then in the EVERSPACE 2 early access launch, we had 23,000 wishlist activations, which is 8.5 times higher than EVERSPACE 1. So this much bigger was the early access launch for EVERSPACE 2. And that is also because we got so much love from Steam. EVERSPACE 1 was featured 2 days on the front page. So you are on this carousel, you get your 2 days, and then depends on the performance. EVERSPACE 2 was there for 8 days. And this was just crazy. 66 million views on the front page. That's 8 times EVERSPACE 1, right? So you really want to do a sequel. If there's something, you have something that's good, make a sequel. I know people complain, oh, why do we have so many sequels? This is why. Because once you have something that is good, you do more, right? We sold 250,000 copies within 15 months. I took the 15 months to compare, because EVERSPACE 1 was for 15 months in early access versus EVERSPACE 2 was 2 years and 3 months. So if you compare the same time period, it says we sold 3 times as many copies in the first week of EVERSPACE 1. Again, that was my business case. So we decided in the end to make a game that's like 3 times more expensive. And then we hit our case here. And because we launched for $40 instead of 30, oops, sorry. Still working? We see. We have 4.5 times more revenues than EVERSPACE 1 did during the first week. And it's worth talking about that price point. Again, if you do early access, some people say, oh, this is the opportunity to get the game for cheap. I'd say, no, it's not. Again, you want to have, because these are you do early access to get the people who are most invested literally into your game. So this is why you want to have a high price point at early access. You give them a little discount, because then we went to $50, but don't undercut during early access, because you get the people who are cheap, you're waiting for the sale, and then tend to complain more than people who are willing to pay more. Also, you leave money on the table. You never get the money back who would have been willing to pay twice as much. And there's a fantastic talk from Simon Sinek. It's called The Law of Diffusion in Innovation. It's not about games, but it explains this bell curve. So it's like you have your innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and the laggers. And it fits perfectly to Kickstarter, early access, launch, summer sales, and then it's subscriptions, and then these high discounts. It's exactly the same. And if I compare numbers, how many copies we sold in a Kickstarter in early access, and then somewhere between 1.0 and let's say 50% price off, it's pretty much the same distribution. Meaning, if you do something like early access, you get even an indicator how many copies you will be able to sell. You already know in your Kickstarter how big the game is going to be. And maybe you get the indication, oh, you shouldn't make the game too big. If the numbers are really low, so, oh man, this is getting too expensive, so you can adjust, right? So this is one more reason why I think a Kickstarter still makes sense, because you gather so much, it's not hard data, but you get an indication where this is going. Okay, see if the remote is still working. Ha! Thank God. During those 2 years, we did 6 major content updates, and compared to 3 major content updates in 9 months with EVERSPACE 1. And the reason is we had every 3 months, we wanted to have a beat, like test the waters. Are we still making the right game? Like we added one more star system. It's a bit easier because you have this is star system, and then there's no jump gate to get to the next. You have the next early access beat, and then you can say, oh, Stargate is open now. The story continues. Here's new stuff to discover. So it helped us, in development to make sure that development is on track. We can prove the quality. The community sees we're maintaining the game. It's not like we sell the game once and then we come back after 2 years. And then I will explain that in another slide when we see the charts, why these beats turned out to be the best sales beats that we had. And I come back to this a little bit later. What happened to us is like the first free update, because it's like we're adding more content to the early access. The press was still writing about it, but after the third, the fourth, they were like, yeah, can you please finish the game? We like want to have the final game, right? We're not going to write about this. Make the game, finish the game, and if you then add more content, we write about it. But it's not that what they said, it was what happened, right? However, in the end, when we had the 1.0 release, then it said, oh, they did 6 major content updates. This is a really big game now. So it still paid off, but it didn't work as I intended it or like hoped it would work with PR, but it does make sense. In terms of sales, we did 2 times 10% off, 2 times 10%, 10 times 20%. You have to do 20%, otherwise there's no Steam notification going out, in case you're not familiar. 3 times 25, because we saw at some point that people are just not buying it anymore. It was not aggressive enough. And compared to, we had only 2 sales for 20% from EVERSPACE 1. The 3 times 25% I regret today. Because if you go 25% off 40%, is now a problem that even at the 35% discount of $50 is still higher. And we see the performance is not as great. But to be honest, we needed the money, so we had to do it. But what I'm trying to say here, if you do early access, try to stick to 20% and find other ways of revenue sources. Otherwise, it might bite you in the end when you go to 1.0 and then you have sales later on. We got fantastic feedback. I would say without early access, the game wouldn't be that great. We couldn't have funded it, and we had 250,000 early access pilots, people who bought the game. Then you get feedback 1 or 2%, and then 1 or 2% of these 1 or 2% are your super fans, and they spend 1,000 hours in the game. They know everything, and they combine things. So like, oh, we didn't know you can combine this laser with this shield, and if you hit the enemy there, then no way you can QA this. even with all the money in the world, is fantastic. So that alone is a reason to make early access. You get these super fans, they give you feedback, they're under NDA. Now we can give them the upcoming versions. Okay, so the bad stuff, what changed? We saw a drop, a significant drop of the CTR, click-through rate. You see an ad, and then you click on it like a banner on Steam. So it's now 2.6 when EVERSPACE 2 is on the front page. It used to be 5.7, so that's a significant drop here. And I think this is simply because there's so many more games out there and there are so many games promoted. Steam changed the way of showing games. It used to be this one page, and now they have the subcategories, meaning they're just more games. So, and there's not that many more users, so it means like the click-through rate goes down. And and that there's a speculation that wishlists are not effective as they used to be. This is the proof. So we're down from 15% to 8.9%. And that makes sense because you get a lot of wishlists to Steam Next festivals and like, okay, wishlist, I just put in a reminder. It's not really that I want to have it, but it's more like, right? So if you get these, whatever your wishlist number is, and yeah, what your, I don't know, what your 50,000 wishlist used to be, now it's, I don't know, I don't have a direct comparison, but it's a lot less in terms of effectiveness. But as you saw, if you have 100,000, if you're in the 100,000s, you're good. If you're, I'd say if you have less than 100,000, could be rocky to get really featured. Maybe, I don't know where the threshold is, but it definitely is higher than it used to be. What's alarming is we used to have a click-through rate during seasonal sales at 28%. So all the winter, summer sales for EVERSPACE 1, we were like, wow, we make a couple 100,000 in just one week or so. That's gone pretty much. And now it's down to close to 3%. And this is because now they have all these subcategories and there's just so many games. You're competing with 10 times, 50 times more titles. That's an issue. Meaning, yeah, and this is now the combination. Meaning that these sales are not as effective as they used to be. So what changed, it used to be the seasonal sales were our strongest beats. Now the strongest beats that we had make a content update and combine it with a daily deal or midweek madness. At the end, I will show some figures. So it used to be, hey, we're doing a summer sale, we're going to be featured. Awesome. We're like, yeah, okay, we got featured like 1,000 more games. And it's like, okay, you see an uplift, which mostly comes from wishlist conversions. Versus the real money is planning your content, give Steam a heads up for the next 3-6 months. This is where I want to come up. Can I have a midweek madness, daily deal, whatever? And then depends how good your game is. You lock this in. And then you make sure that you hit that target. If something's not finished, just cut it from the game. Make sure you have that date. These are the most important beats right now. And you can see this. I have this in a sec. You will see this in the charts. Okay, yeah, and this is where the 25 sale was biting us in terms of performance, because then with the new price point, the higher discount was still a higher price because of that. Hope that makes sense. So the ugly part, yeah, the vocal minority of the VR community wasn't happy that we don't support VR anymore. Again, check this out on Steam Forum if you want to, not fun. Very ugly, but it made us change the core, one of the core mechanics in the game. We used to have enemies that constantly level scale with you because it's a looter shooter and you want to make sure that if you go to earlier areas, then there's still good loot. But a lot of people hated it because it's also an RPG and they wanted to steamroll over the enemies. If they go first to the first system, we're like, yeah. And then our team was also split. And then in the end, we found a solution that we said, well, we keep enemies static within one star system. So you can progress, you can steamroll over the first units you meet in the game. Once you move to the next star system in combination with the story progression threshold, then there's a radio call, hey, the units in the first star system, they upgraded the engines, let's go back and kick some butt, and you know, and then you go back. We made it that they're not higher than you, but they leveled up, so they're still kind of low level. You feel empowered or powerful, but the loot is still meaningful. And that was most people were happy with that because it's very, very dangerous to change something major in the game. Okay, then Game Pass. So after early access, the Game Pass deal we have with Microsoft is our biggest chunk of revenue for on the road to the 20 million. And I can speak about this a bit more openly after the leaks. So otherwise I would have said Game Pass is good. Now I can say, no, it's really fantastic. It really is awesome. I would even say Game Pass right now is the best deal in the industry. If you can get a Game Pass deal, yeah, get it. So, but you have to earn it. It doesn't fall from the sky. The really good thing is, since this is like, it's very short. It's just 1 or 2 pages contract-wise. Microsoft has this in there. If you tick the boxes, you negotiate. You meet these guys at conferences. You demo the game. Obviously, you need to have wish lists. There needs to be some traction for your game, but they're very open. They're interested. This is at least what we learned. And we don't have exclusivity for Game Pass, but I know that there are other titles that have exclusivity. Obviously, if there's exclusivity, you get more money. It's worth asking. If they don't push for it, you can ask, hey, are you interested in exclusivity? Maybe there's more. Payment can be in milestones. We had that. So we got a big chunk for the bringing EVERSPACE to, while it was still in early access, to the game preview program, which is a lot of extra work. I talk about it in a sec, but it was worth it because then we got our first payment. And the irony is, because we got this major payment in combination with Steam Early Access and some other deals, we could keep working on EVERSPACE to another year, make a better game. That means Steam players on Steam, on PlayStation, get a better game because of Game Pass. And by the way, I said this in a very small interview that hit the news. Everybody liked it. Microsoft liked it. And I ended up having a meeting with Phil Spencer at Gamescom. So, yeah, that was sweet. Awesome dude, by the way. Fantastic. He knows his stuff. Great fan. Okay, significant revenue on early access releases. Yeah, so that means your game is, even if it's in early access, there is a big chunk of payment coming depending on what Microsoft is interested, but generally they want to have games in game preview. We did it twice, EVERSPACE 1 and EVERSPACE 2. Then there's the next big chunk when you hit 1.0 and you deliver on console. And there's the potential of another one because the model is you have your game in Game Pass, typically it's like 12 months or so or longer, depends on the deal. And what they like, you add more content in terms of you have a big install base because of Game Pass. There's like 10, 20 times more people play your game as if it's not for free included in the Game Pass subscription. And then you can upsell to an expansion. And then there's a possibility if you say, hey, in 1 year or 2 years after that, there's new content, they might be interested to add more life to the Game Pass deal, and then you come back to the negotiation table. We're not here yet, but that's something. Next time we meet with Team Green, we might talk about it. Okay, you get massive marketing support. It's pretty much a given. If your game is in Game Pass, every news outlet is going to write about this month, it's this title. And then you're there, it's fantastic. And since it's typically 4 or 5 games, it's really eyeballs on your game. So that alone is a ton of money, PR, marketing money worth. And yeah, also the Game Pass, Microsoft is a kingmaker by default. If you get a Game Pass deal, you are already in the top % of the games. Once you have that, you can go to the publisher, maybe for a new title or your existing title. You can go to other platforms. Hey, Microsoft thinks this is awesome, right? Then it's much easier to convince others, yeah, it's awesome, or we want to work. Can we have the next title? You know, that's how it goes. So BizDev 101, basically. We didn't see, a lot of people said, oh, you probably don't sell on Steam anymore, and people were concerned that this Game Pass is a terrible deal. Actually, I didn't see that, and I showed a graph in a sec. At least on PC, we didn't see a decline in sales. And I would even say you sell more copies, not significantly, but still I saw people who played it on Game Pass and said, I really love the game, I want to support the devs, I buy it on Steam too. So is it a game changer? Probably not, but it feels really nice. Okay, what's not so good? The bad stuff. There's this thing on the Microsoft platform that really bugs me. You can rate a game that is in game preview, and it's mandatory you have a demo, and you can rate the demo. But it's not. You cannot see as a user, is this negative review because of a demo or the full version or the board version, and that really bugs me out. We're like, because you get so many negative reviews, or it doesn't download, or it ends after 2 hours. Of course, it's a demo. 1 star, bam. So yeah, I wish they could change that. Builds must go through certification. That always takes a little bit. So, you know, you put your game up on Steam, and boom, you're out. There's no problem. So what can happen, you patch really fast on Steam, and then people on Game Pass, oh, we feel like second citizen. We're like, yeah, sorry, we have to go through certification. It's not like we can push the button. So, but they will understand. But be ready. If you do this, you need to have, we have one engineer just working on this whole Win GDK and Unreal Engine supporting the platform, because it's very complex. It's a legacy system, things that we flagged, but it is what it is. But again, the pros definitely outweigh the cons. A console sim ship release becomes more tricky because they want to have play anywhere, so you can take the save game from the Windows Store to the Xbox, and then it makes things complicated. Obviously, if you have different save games, technically, then you could break the game. So yeah, that's a challenge. And it's also harder to sign co-publishing deals because some publishers really don't like Game Pass. Like some of the very big ones, they rather want to put this to their marketing machine, don't get the cash up front and sell copies because they also have a retail strategy. And I ended up in negotiations with big publishers before we signed Game Pass. If you sign a Game Pass deal, our deal is off, right? But then we went with Team Green because the deal was really good. It's the third time we're partnering now with Microsoft. So yeah, obviously we really appreciate that relationship there, and we want to do more. But this is going to be a discussion you're going to face. So the ugly part is, you don't take your Steam build and just upload it to the Windows Store. So you have to go to Win GDK, and that means sometimes certain video playback, DLSS, FSR, HDR, in our case, Track IR, we ran into issues where Unreal Engine was not on par for Win GDK, like the Steam version. So that's something, yeah. And then if you take the feature out, then you have the issue that the few people complain. So why don't I have this? And then you have to go back. They understand, but be ready. There will be technical issues. It's never be an easy way. There's some extra, that's what I said, the user management for cross-save. So you have to implement to Microsoft, implement Microsoft ecosystem. So that there are a few things. If you haven't done it the first time, will take you a while. So this is not like, oh, we're done in a week. So this takes weeks really to get this going, and it takes constant maintenance. And then we ran into an issue. No sim ship on PC and console. Let me check. No, it makes it much harder to have everything, all your ducks in a row, so to speak, because Steam is ready, but then your certification on the Windows Store is not ready, on PlayStation not. So the more platforms you have, the more complicated it gets. And especially in this combination with game preview already being out, we ran into the issue. We launched on PC 1.0 first, obviously for Steam and the Windows Store. And then we did the console version. You get keys for the Xbox, but it doesn't work for the press, because the 1.0 version on PC is already out. So there is a way, but it's very complicated. But there's no easy way, let's put it this way. There's no easy way to give the 1.0 Xbox version to the press before the launch. And that is because you do game preview first. There's a way you you duplicate the project, which is not a shortcut. That takes weeks again. So this is why there are no Xbox reviews for EVERSPACE 2. Okay. 7-digit license deal. Okay, this is the Game Pass. This is the trajectory of our sales on Steam, and you see this is where EVERSPACE 2 launched in Game Pass. And it's hard to see. Maybe there's a slight decline in the flat line, but you can say later on it picks up again. So it's not really that you can say, well, okay, it completely destroyed our performance on Steam. And you see these spikes, those are obviously the sales, and these big super spiky spikes, these are daily deals. These are the daily deals combined with a content update. Those have been our strongest beats. And you see, even after the Game Pass, we have sometimes spikes that are even higher than before. So no, I don't think we hurt our sales going with Game Pass. Then the 7-digit government. So for the expansion, we got 1.65 million euro from the German taxpayers. So thanks to the Germans. It's a great program. And that also is fantastic. It's also in other countries, but Germany is really pushing this right now. So today there will be a news if they add more millions for next year because the funds are dry, and we just slipped through the door because the money was out. So very happy about that. So you get somewhere between 25 and 50% of your development budget. No strings attached. You don't have to pay it back. It's fantastic. First come, first serve process. So the material you need to provide is pretty much anything you need to provide to work with the publishers anyway. Milestone planning, content planning, and whatnot, and then detailed staff planning. You can partner with international studios. You can combine it with other programs, at least in the EU, I think. And there's a surprisingly straightforward online submission. Ironically, the German space agency is running that program. We're making a space game, so yeah, we already had a few friends over there. That's good. You have surprisingly flexible payment schedule, so it's you invest them. You report how much money you're going to spend in 3 months, and then you get the money. And if you want to change that, you can still do this slightly. So way more flexible than you could work with the publisher. So if in your country there's a way to get these fundings, shoot for that. It's worth it. It's worth it. So the bad. Obviously, it requires solid funding. It's not like 100%. So you have to be at some point where you can contribute to the development budget. Requires detailed reporting. So I'd say you need one person who's just doing this. And yeah, it takes time. So it took us from the beginning to putting the process in. They help you to jump through the hoops. Took us 6 months to secure the funding, but still nice. Budgets are limited. I just said that. The ugly, so it didn't happen to us, but I heard it from other studios. So this program made the news, and it's like, oh, we're an investor. We give you, let's say, 5 million for your studio. This is how much equity we get. But because we get 5 million to your studio, you get another, let's say, 2 million from the German government. This is why actually you get 7 million from us, and this is why we get more equity from you. I heard this several times, so be on the lookout. I mean, I understand they came up with this, but actually you bring this to the table. I would argue this is not coming from them. This is not out of their pocket. Yes, it's out of the pocket of the government, but it comes there because you make it happen. I'd say this is your part. So I would fight that back. But it could lend to a chicken egg situation. You don't get the funding, then you don't get the government grant, right? But again, BizDev 101. That's going to be a tough one. Chicken egg stalling deals. Then retail distribution real quick. Retail is in the decline. We know that. However, there's still money to be made. And there are various partners who are on the lookout for great games. So you can secure 6-digit advances on future revenues. There's access to alternative markets, meaning when people say, I don't buy digital games, I just want to have this in the shelf, and if all the servers collapse, I still want to play that PlayStation game, well, then you need to have a retail version. And you get additional marketing support, which is good. It's a nice add-on, but it's not going to be as effective as if you do your super targeted campaign on YouTube, Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, and we can talk about that after the show if you want. The deals are pretty straightforward. I'm pretty good at negotiating, and I'm a tough cookie there, but they didn't budge. It's like, no, this is it. And it's like, okay, whatever. I take the MG. I didn't expect to make more revenue out of this, so take the MG and say, fine, if there's more, be happy, but basically take the MG, and that's probably it. There are plenty of partners, always hungry for quality content. It also helps fulfilling. If you do a Kickstarter, then you have now I have to have a collector's edition, and now I have to this and this and this and this. We did this ourselves for EVERSPACE 1. So Christian, my partner, there's a picture where he was like taking these little cartridges, putting these in boxes and putting into the machine, and he's like, oh, I hate this. And so yeah, that takes off quite a load from your shoulders. Collector editions are nice because then you have a higher margin, obviously. And it's a great reward for your team, for partners, for media. It can be nice to have a physical version. The bad, obviously the game must be close to completion. You won't get these MGs at the, let's say, 10, 20%, 30% stage of your game. You need to be, I don't know, beta at least. Guarantees always eating future revenue. So if somebody who would have bought the digital copy, you would have made way more money because of the VAT goes down from retail version, the retailer takes the cut, the distributor takes the cut, the publisher takes the cut, and then you are, let's say the game costs $50, you're left with 2 instead of 50, and then it's usually 60% you get if you sell on Steam, right? 60%. And deal making, yeah, it takes time. So that took us several months, even though actually things are in place. They have all the paperwork, still negotiating and pulling this off takes a while. And the ugly part is you need to have a 6 months of lead for the retail release. And once you have locked that in, it's very hard to move that date, because then they start organizing their channel marketing, and they hate moving dates. Happened to us, but also we had to move. We said we need a little bit longer. They didn't like it, and then they need to move because supply chain issues, COVID, and then like, and they said, yeah, now we need longer. I said, okay, I think we're square then. That's all right. Yeah, generally you're less flexible in removing release dates. There's very little control over regional communication. So we had the issue like in Korea, oh, the game is already available in the stores. We're like, no, it's not. We're not even haven't announced it, but it was. So not a drama, but can happen. And yeah, and diluting sales performance heftily in case you sell a ton of retail versions that otherwise wouldn't be digital copies just for you, obviously. Okay, and I think this is the last source. It's actually we use this quite a lot. 6-digit loans from private investors. So these are your lawyer, dentist friends, just people who have too much money to throw around and trust you, right? So until today, even though we're doing fine for 10 years, we don't have a loan from any of the banks. Actually, when we ask for this, where's this money coming from? Is this laundry money? We're like, no, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, dude, what do you want? No, we don't like that. It's like, maybe it's a German thing, I don't know. So we're with the Deutsche Bank and we didn't get anything. So we went back to friends and said, and typically you do this when you are very close to hitting your beat. I wouldn't recommend doing this, hey, I want to start a studio. How about you give me 100, 200K? Because so many things can go wrong. And since this is private money, they won't forget. It's sometimes hard for them to write it off. Only go to friends and family when you're very close to, I get this Kickstarter, I just need 1 more month. I just need 1 more month to land this early access, whatever. Then it's a good spot. And typically, and then since it's fairly easy to set up a loan like this, it only needs weeks, sometimes less. Typically it works. If it's a convertible loan, it works like this. There's a fixed interest. It used to be 1-2%. Probably right now it's a bit higher. Then there is a interest based on the profit per year. It used to be in the 7-8 range, probably closer to 10% right now. And then there's a third component. You agree on a valuation at the time where you get the loan. And then after, let's say, 1-2 years, you sell the studio, or an official audit says the studio is now worth 10 times, ideally 10 times more. They also get a cut. And you put in a clause that future investors can pay out the loan giver at a certain rate. Typically it's a 2x, so they gave you 100K, then 200K, and they're out, so you can pull the plug, because investors based on equity don't like to have all these small people sitting at the table. At the same time, you give the loan giver a right to convert the loan into equity, and typically say at a better rate, so let's say for 80%. So instead of like you get stock as if you gave me 100K, you get more stock out of that at this 80% discount. Yeah, what I liked the most about this one, if somebody gives you money and it's not in equity, they don't have a say in where your studio is going. And I speak from experience. I had investors on equity money, and they say, yeah, you know the business best. This is why I invest in you, and we won't interfere with your manager. Hell no. They do this from the first week on. They sit there, and every discussion, at least this was my experience, they say, no, you need to do free-to-play. You need to do VR. Then they just read headlines, what's the latest jazz, and they want you to do that because they think this is the thing. And you're like, no, dude. This was a decision made 5 years ago. No, that doesn't make sense. And then you end up in explaining investors who are not into your business why this is not a good idea. I was there, I hated it. It's not I'm running a business because I don't want somebody to tell me what I need to do, right? So this is why this is awesome. So they're part of this. You tell them what's going on, but since they don't have equity, they don't have a say where your company is going. Very big distinction. But there's a price to that as well, of course. So the bad requires a solid track record. You need to build up trust. So the people have to know you. You have to launch a few titles before. The legal fees can be significant depending how complicated the contract is. We're talking about a couple €1,000, maybe €10,000. Then you have to deal with ongoing finance reporting. If you're a pure dev team, you've never done that. That is something every year. How much money did you make? Where is it coming from? Where's my money? Where's my interest? So that's work. It dilutes your performance. Every time you take money up front before you actually make the money, no matter what, it always dilutes the performance of your company. So it's always expensive money. The more you take, the more expensive it gets. And the ugly part, that can be, they say, yeah, it's all good. I give you 100K, 200, I give you even $500,000. But you know what? If everything goes south and you file for bankruptcy, you still owe me the 500K, right? You cannot hide. My company is gone, that's it, we split apart. No. I even had that with an equity investor. And man, they chase you down. And that could mean you lose your house, your key, your car, everything. So you have to be very careful about that. We were in the lucky position that with the current studio, we didn't have that. We had private investors said, no, we don't want to have private liability from you guys. You're going to be fine. But some people might ask for that. And that is really the problem. You already lose your studio. Everything is terrible. And then you still have to pay them back. That can ruin you. So pay attention. And the biggest discussion point will be agreeing on a pre, post, and exit valuation, because that's like, yeah, you're twisting arms, right? Okay. Digital orders, yeah, the pre-orders. Okay, I have to browse through these a bit quicker. So we did pre-orders for console for EVERSPACE 1 and 2. The good is you get extra visibility on the console dashboard. There is platform marketing support. We got it from PlayStation twice. With EVERSPACE 1, we were in the newsletter and the blog. This time we went in the newsletter, but blog and social. That's really good. It's a very good period where you can optimize your marketing. You do your social campaigns, see how the performance, cost per click, cost per view performs to get traffic into the store. Use that time, optimize. I talk a lot, yeah. So you optimize your campaign, and then once it's ready, you spend the bigger part of your budget when you hit 1.0. Hang on, still not. That feels better. Okay, 5 minutes, geez, okay. Early and kind of along, yeah, and you get an idea. Depending, so on PlayStation, you go to the dashboard, you check pre-orders sorted by most bought or most sales, and then you get an indicator how good you're doing. If you're on page 1, you're good. EVERSPACE 2 was on page 1, row 2 or so that's all right. If you're not on page 1, pre-orders are not good. Expect that the 1.0 launch won't be great either. So it's a good indicator to see where it is going. If you get platform love, again, this could easily be 7 digits revenue. The bad, yeah, you can, on PC, you can do either pre-orders or early access. You cannot do both. Again, I would always recommend early access. Pre-orders can be, especially on PC, can be tricky. And if you need the money up front, then early access is definitely the bigger revenue stream. It requires a certified build on console to have your store page up. And extra effort for pre-order bonuses. Ah, yeah, right. Okay, so if you just, if you want to say, hey, there's an extra ship skin or whatever, it takes away development time from content that would have been in the base game. Otherwise, I'd say it's usually not worth it. Rather go as we did with the 20% discount. Pre-order, 20% discount, that's your goodie, that's it. Don't do any extra stuff, it's not worth it, it's too much work. The ugly part, pre-order discounts eat to profits. Yeah, again, you are selling the game early in the life cycle at a lower price, which is typically not a good idea. So you do pre-orders, but it's another marketing beat. So this is like where you have to balance these options. There could be massive refunds if the game is broken afterwards. So yeah, make a good game. But we've seen a lot of games launching in the past that weren't so great, especially on console. So yeah. More numbers. Okay, 2 minutes. EVERSPACE 1. So these are the numbers from EVERSPACE 2 1.0 launch week. 580,000 wish lists compared to EVERSPACE 1 2.5 times. 22 million Steam impressions. Again, this is front page love, 2.5 times compared to EVERSPACE 1. 45,000 sales, that's 2 times EVERSPACE 1. 1.18 million Steam revenue, that's grossing, not net. 3.6 times, again, that was my business plan. We have to make 3 times as much compared to the sequel, because predecessor, because the game is 3 times more expensive. The really good news was like 10,000 peak CCUs, concurrent users, during launch. That's 7 times bigger than EVERSPACE 1. It really showed that we increased our community. EVERSPACE 2 on consoles, we did pre-orders on both, as I said. We had 2.4 times compared to EVERSPACE 1. Not exactly comparable because we didn't get the same amount of love on both platforms, but still it shows we did better. 206,000, that's net for PlayStation. That is net, that's correct. PS5 pre-orders, that's almost 4 times compared to EVERSPACE 1, so yay. And it's kind of comparable because back in the day when we launched on PlayStation 4, EVERSPACE 1 to EVERSPACE 2, launching on PlayStation 5, it's roughly the same install base, so it's kind of comparable, it's okay. What's new, we have wishlists on PlayStation right now. If we would have known that and had a console version earlier, we would have more wishlists here. It seems to be 6,000, 16,000 doesn't seem to be a lot. But actually it is, because on console, much smaller install base, people don't use it, it's a really good number. We're sitting now at 40,000 wishlists on PlayStation during the launch month, and we had 420,000 new Game Pass users in month 1. So this is really what Game Pass can do. Okay, one more, last slide, I promise. And this one is a bit, what I try to do, and I show both. What I told about this, these are our most important sales beats now. There's an update, and then there is a front page feature that I schedule with Steam. So when I compared our last daily deal during early access, doing 25% off at $30 versus Midweek Madness, only the first 2 days because midweek is 3 days, 30% off at $34.99. And what you can see, and this is why this is in orange, it's about the same revenue that we did, despite we had 60 million impressions versus 29 million impressions, same click-through rate. So people are like, oh, okay, I want to see that game. So the decision about the price hasn't been made yet. But once we come down to how much money we made, and when we drill down to the other lists, we see that actually people are still waiting for a higher price point. And you can see that indication. We do have a 0.2 day 1 wishlist conversion, which is about the same. So we are browsing through our wishlist through discount level, discount level, discount level. But the second last line, 3% store page conversion for the daily deal at $30 versus 0.6 store page conversion shows people are still waiting for the game getting cheaper. Okay, but we're still going up in the wish list. We set at 561, now we're sitting at 705K, so still people waiting for the game to be cheaper. Okay, guys, that's it. Thanks.